Welcome back to Morning Joy, where truth matters. I'm Keith Downey, your host, and this morning we have the pleasure of welcoming Will Anselm. He's a medieval art historian, reluctant theologian, curator of treasure and trash from the Catholic past, and script editor. I really just took that bio from your Twitter feed, your bio there, but welcome to the show, Will.
Thank you for having me. So Wednesday, so laziness is permitted. No harm, no foul.
So, Will, for those out there that might not be familiar with you and your work, especially what you do on X, formerly known as Twitter, tell our listeners about yourself.
Yeah, well, in terms of really the X business, since April, end of April, beginning of May, we've been seeing basically a part of an explosion of Catholic content, rightly ordered, obedient, faithful Catholic content on the platform with the spaces. Um, we just saw an extraordinary, but really that we can only attribute to the intercession of Blessed Carlo Acutis at the end of April. And after that, we started doing coffee hour, Catholic X coffee hour every Saturday, promoting the best of what's available out there in real life and in person. And since then, we've just done some extraordinary stuff. We've talked about Vatican documents. We've interviewed a couple of bishops and priests. We have done spaces about the problem of evil. We've spoken with Catholic Vote. We've spoken with a whole raft of exciting people, but most importantly, just really, and prayer spaces, say nothing of the fact that if you pick up your phone and you're part of the Catholic X community, there's literally prayers in up to 8 different languages, literally every hour of the day. So really just in the middle of all of that, and having a life as well in, my archives and in my libraries, busy. But yeah, it's been a joy to see everything just happen so quickly. But yeah, that's where I'm at with that.
Yeah, you and Diana Henry, my goodness, have this like partnership to help bring, like you're kind of saying, like Orthodox Catholic content to X. Which, I mean, if anyone's familiar with being on X, there's just really nothing else like that. It's a lot of people arguing, and yeah. Anyways, so the theme, overarching theme today has been somewhat of working in the vineyard, which you all have been doing there wonderfully. So what was it, the inspiration behind, like, why choose X of all places to do this?
Well, I think that there was so much going on there already, and it's important to emphasize that with what happened quite miraculously, and just the extent of how quickly it blew up. I mean, 1 minute there was this post that went viral, and the next minute EWTN, not quite literally on the phone, but in the inbox, as it were, for interviews. But there was really lots of really brilliant stuff going on. For example, our friend and colleague Stephen over at Pray the Rosary, he's been praying the Rosary every night with sometimes up to 400, 500 people every night for frequently not 5 years, for 2 years. There's a whole raft of good stuff that's been going on there already, but it didn't seem to be homogenized and unified. And I don't think there was ever any intention. Most of us, myself included, I've always had a bad relationship with social media. And I really have. And look at me, like, who knew? Be careful what you pray for, folks. But what we saw happen really is that there was just this extraordinary. All of a sudden, it just seemed to be a thing, and it seemed to be. I was talking to Diane about this all the time. It is exactly where it needs to be, because there's the established media outlets. We've got EWTN, who could, thank you, Mother Angela, to pray for us. There's all the established media outlets. There's published media. There's, of course, the extraordinary guidance that we get from the Vatican. And then there's this strange gap in the middle of sometimes called the grassroots, which is appropriate speaking in the agrarian. We talk about working in the vineyard and so on. But
Right.
I think really the motivation was there was so much good stuff going on and so many people having so much to say. And really just, it was almost like being greenlit.
Mm.
That was almost like that go ahead. And people who'd been doing things for a very long time connected with those who had been listening in. And all of a sudden, people started to move forward and kind of collegially collaborate and get their heads together and say, can we do this? Can we do that? Um, it's really important to recognize that for us as lay people, we don't have authority to preach or teach It's a really important point. I do end up saying this in back channels quite a bit sometimes with friends and colleagues. But what we do have is absolute permission to communicate our faith as Catholics authentically and
Mhm.
vibrantly. And what we've seen is through it being a kind of unified block of people working in a vineyard, if you like, we've seen constantly every week people getting messages about people who've lapsed Catholics, converts, Protestants, even a couple of Muslims who have just been saying, this is you're all unified, you're not arguing with each other, please tell me more, so and the rest is history as well.
That's incredible what you've been doing on an X, and I forgot what I was going to say, but it was probably something alluding to the fact that the connection with these people, with Catholics in general. There's so many things that I have discovered just simply by being part of the Catholic X space there, because I typically get my news now from Twitter or X, and now I even get more news from Twitter and X, Catholic based news that you would never really even hear of, like things locally in other regions that really help inspire us to be joyful Catholics. And so I attribute that to you guys, that what you're doing great things over there on X. So that's awesome. But I also wanted to talk about your background in medieval art history. What role I would say does beauty play in evangelization and drawing people closer to God, especially on X?
Well, I think there are a lot of beauty will save the world. We
Mm-hmm.
we, we know beauty will save the world by virtue of the fact that God is beauty, right? But I think that there are levels to this. There's a lot of architecture accounts and there's a lot of art accounts, and we see lots of it. Beautiful to see. Sometimes you pick up your phone and there's a lot of arguments, and then there's a beautiful picture of Our Lady or a beautiful chapel in Austria or something like this. And that's one component of it. I mean, we boast the most extraordinary variety and collection of styles of beauty and art, design, architecture. But I think that there's a deeper level, really, which is certainly for me as a medievalist, all of the kinds of beauty that we see around us are fundamentally imperfect attempts to portray that ultimate beauty. As Abbot Suger, the inventor of Gothic architecture, basically said that I shall be illumined by the lights that in my soul I shall travel through earthly lights to contemplate Christ, who is the true light, who is the true beauty, the true door. Um, I think that it's so important to see that there's just really something for everybody. And it's difficult for me to
Mm-hmm.
opine on it a little bit too much as an art historian because sometimes the captions are wrong and sometimes there's a bit of incorrect information. But broadly speaking, that's one of the things that we see so very often. And we know this just from real life as well. That people will walk into a basilica in Spain and people are just overwhelmed. And how do
Yeah.
we how do we ensure that we're in some way always manifesting the true beauty in ourselves, who is Christ in some way, shape, or form?
Yeah. Do you think we'll ever see kind of a resurgence of this type of art? Because I know a lot of Catholics out there are coming back and seeing a lot of these icons, this art, and are really drawn and really want to continue having this awestruck, especially when they go into, say, like a church. Do you think there'll be a resurgence of that?
It's difficult to say. I mean, we're seeing a lot of great things with, for example, the new liturgical movement, that extraordinary website where just a couple of doors down, as it were, from kind of a lot of the stuff that I try to do. You often see a lot of brilliant kind of classical ecclesiastical architecture firms. There's a lot of
Mm.
just thinking of, for example, for over in Birmingham, Alabama, there are new churches that are being built that are, there's a hunger to kind of leapfrog over the some of the more questionable choices of utilitarian design from the 20th century, leapfrogging over to more traditional styles of architecture, which lead the soul up to God just by the virtue of the fact that you look at it, you see perfection. They're designed on mathematical and proportional based systems, and I think that there's no reason why we couldn't or shouldn't see it. It's all a question of money in the end, I think, right?
Yeah.
That's the only barrier.
That's true. Yeah. So with all of the work that you've been doing on X, is there anything that gives you hope for the future of the church, from what you see?
So much. I mean, first of all, the first thing that gives me hope for the future of the church is Christ telling us that the gates of hell will not prevail, even though we're very good at telling ourselves and each other that it might have already happened sometimes. But what I do see so clearly is we have a lot of catechumens in our community, and from wild, wacky, unexpected backgrounds, and some of them are just running rings around, around people who've been in the faith from birth or have been long-standing converts. There is such a zeal, especially at the moment in time, with what is going on for us nationally, internationally, globally, both as a church and in terms of the political strife of the world. People are rushing in their droves to get hold of what you might say is the last bastion of objective truth. You know, for example, as I said very often a couple of weeks ago, if you removed every reference of Revelation from the Catechism, it would still be an enormously compelling document to people
Hmm.
out there today who are not in the church, because people people are hungry for
Hmm.
truth. The extent of relativization of truth has gone so far. One of the things that I see so clearly is that people will pop up in spaces or connect, and they're not quite sure what's what, but they want truth and they know it's there, and then they find Christ, more to the good.
That's so amazing. Well, thank you so much for hopping on, Will. We can find more about you on X. Just search Will Anselm and you'll find him. You can even Google him and find a few of your written work and research papers. So make sure you check that out. It's good stuff. Love it. Some easy reading, for I would say. But thank you so much, Will. And hey, that's it for Morning Joy, where truth matters. Now we understand if you're listening on the radio, you're probably going to be listening to the Holy Mass coming up next. Please pray for us. We will continue to pray for you. Otherwise, we're going to go ahead and transition on over to our after show clubhouse, where we get to hang out with you. Just easily search Morning Joy Radio or GRN online on any of the social medias. That way we can hang out and debrief from the show today. Otherwise, God bless and make it a joyful day. We'll see you.
This has been Morning Joy, where truth matters, hosted by Keith Downey. Take some joy with you today. Visit grnonline.com/joy to listen again, share a segment, or answer the question of the day. That's grnonline.com/joy.